I want to be very transparent and say that it has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life is to be able to overcome this and come out on the other side. The reason I am where I am today is because I was willing to face it head on.
This is Work in Progress. I'm your host, Gayle Calvert. And yes, I'm a work in progress. Welcome back to Work in Progress. I'm your host, Gayle Calvert, and today I'm honored to have Megan Farison with me. Megan is a speaker, musician, educator, and author whose memoir, Dissonance, has deeply moved readers and quickly became an Amazon bestseller. We'll dive into Megan's journey of healing from childhood trauma, how she discovered the truth about her past, and the transformative power of writing to reclaim your narrative. Today's conversation is about the importance of confronting our past and how sharing your story can be a tool for healing. Megan, thank you so much for being here. This is not an easy topic to discuss. I think you are so brave. And I know helping so many people deal with their trauma. So I can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be here with you.
Thanks. Well, I have your book right here, Dissonance. It's so good. I highly recommend. As a writer, I was pulled in right away, Megan. And what I'll say is just right off the bat, I haven't finished it, but it is obvious from the first words how open and honest you are and will be throughout. Megan, you shared with me and you share in the book that you were a victim of abuse in your childhood, but you didn't realize until years later that you were actually a victim. Can you start by sharing with our listeners your story and a little bit about how that unfolded?
I want to start by saying that you already mentioned I'm an educator. So it is still wild to me that standing here today and looking back on when this all unraveled, that even though I had been teaching, I had taught for a decade or more, I had never even understood what grooming was. And I worked with children. So I had gone through training as an educator, and to go through all of these experiences and have no real awareness of what grooming is, or really, I don't even have a memory of hearing that word. Like, I'm sure I did at some point. And today, in today's society, we hear it all the time. That's unfortunate, but awareness is good. So to go back, though, I'm going to get into some things that I've actually never talked about on a podcast. Some of this is in the book, and it talks about that when I was young, I think that my relationship with my parents sort of set the stage for being able to accept behavior and confusing what love looks like, saying, okay, love can look really dramatic. Love can look like someone yelling at you, raging at you, calling you names, and then saying, but I love you so much. And as a person who grew up in an evangelical church, it's complicated, right? But being taught to respect authority and trust people in positions of authority. It was like I was primed to go into a situation where, I'm going to go into a school and I'm going to meet a teacher and I trust them right away. They don't even have to earn it from me. It's like immediately they like music, I like music, and they give me attention. So I ended up meeting my high school band director at the end of my 8th grade year, and I liked him right away. So when I went into high school, I loved music and I thought I was going to be an English teacher. But then when I spent time with him and I was going to band, I thought, I still want to be a teacher, but I want to be a band director. This is what I really want to do. This is what I feel called to do. I won't get into all of the details, but basically grooming it can sometimes occur quickly, but often it occurs over a period of a stretch of time. And it happens so slowly, you don't even realize it's happening. But this man is building trust with me in multiple ways. And at some point, it's in my sophomore year, I wake up and I go, I feel like I'm in love with my band director.
Wow.
And I felt like, how did I let this happen? Which is such an interesting thought in itself, right? Is how did I let this happen?
You felt like you had done this.
Yeah,
Right.
because I didn't go to school thinking, oh, I'm going to fall in love with a teacher. No, like you're going to school, you're looking at other teenage boys. I had a boyfriend I was on and off with, but basically this man had built a relationship with me where I felt like we were in this special world that only we shared together. The main goal of grooming is to make you feel like it's a world that only you share with the person who's doing it to you. And I believed that organically, that we had a lot in common. And I'd been told that I was mature for my age. And so I believed I was more like an adult.
Right.
And so it wasn't that I was insecure or I was the quiet kid or the isolated kid.
Mm-hmm.
I was the kid that believed I belonged, that I actually was worthy of someone's attention in this way. And so, eventually this man found an opportunity to take that relationship. He kept pushing boundaries until he felt like he could take that to a physical level. And so he engaged in this sexual relationship with me. And I thought it was a consensual thing because I wanted it. Nothing in me said that I didn't want it. I wasn't afraid of him.
Right.
I fully believed that he was in love with me just like I was in love with him.
Right.
It basically took up my adolescence. It interrupted my adolescence, even into my young adulthood. So imagine all of those formative years where your brain is forming thoughts about the world around them and how you fit into the world and relationships and how relationships work.
Yeah.
And this man interrupted all of that time. He poisoned it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that relationship ended, I walked away still believing that I understood what it was. And believing that this man was a good man, that he had loved me, and that it just didn't, work out, right? And there are reasons surrounding that. But I walked away from that with that ingrained in me, like coded in my brain and my body.
He was your ex-boyfriend.
It was like, it felt like that. Like, yeah, it was weird. But it was, in a way, it was a former relationship, right? It was a relationship, an unconventional one, but still a relationship.
Sure.
That's what it felt like to me. And I wish the best for him. One of the strange things, too, is I had no idea. Now I can look back and see, I had no idea the impact this relationship actually had on me. I thought that I understood. I thought I was in control. I thought that I was walking away with agency, right? That I was making choices. And this is one of the reasons why it doesn't matter if a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old looks mature, if they are physically developed, if they know how to speak to you like an adult. Their brain is limited and their experiences are limited. So even though I was smart and I read the world, so well in some ways, this person was still able to manipulate me and get me to believe something that as an adult, had I watched this happen as an outsider, I would have been able to see it very clearly.
Right.
But I couldn't.
Right. So your parents had no idea, or did they know that you were in a relationship?
There were things that my parents did know, and they were not equipped to handle it or understand it in a way that was like, okay, this is very wrong and Megan is going to be hurt by this. Megan is harmed by this. In fact, one of the things my mom used to say when it came up, which was very rare, but she would say, well, he never hurt you. And I would agree with her because we had no idea. No, he had actually hurt me very deeply. And we just didn't see the fruit of that. It didn't bear the fruit of that very rotten fruit, if you will, until much later. And so I was a high schooler in the early 2000s. For some of your listeners, if they can sort of go back into that era and what that was like.
Well, I think that's important too. I think we hear this a lot for all kinds of experiences, that those of us who are adults now, then our parents didn't have the information. They didn't know. They didn't have social media. People were not talking about so many things. And so it's not even in their realm, right, to know how to deal with this.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, even further than that, we were sexualizing Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. These were children. I mean, these are teenagers wearing these outfits. And it was okay for full-grown men interviewing Britney Spears to ask about her sex life. So it wasn't even just that we weren't even talking. It was like we were we were like on board with like, hey, if they look enough like an adult, it's okay for these things to happen. And we just didn't know. We weren't educated as a society. It's pretty crazy how much we've learned in the past even decade, right, about this since the Me Too movement and all that. So anyway, here I am in 2019. I've had a career as a music educator at this point. I did move away from band and I ended up doing voice, choral music and vocal music and things like that. But I've had all these experiences now as an educator, and I'm married. I've almost been married 10 years. I have 2 young children, and I'm at this point in my life where I sort of feel like everything is falling into place. I'm like, all right, I have everything that I want. I had this new job working at a church as a director of music and arts, and it offered all this flexibility. So everything seems great. We moved into a new house and it was like, oh, just everything seems so awesome. And then one morning in April of 2019, my husband visited me at work. And strangely enough, this is always the hardest part of the story to tell. And I think it's because this is the moment when everything changed. And so my husband showed up and I thought he was just coming to visit me because, he misses me and what a great day. And he showed me a mugshot of my high school band director and this arrest article that had gone with it. And I remember the feeling. I had never felt it before, but it was like I had left my body. Like the whole world stopped when I saw this image. And my brain was trying to make sense of it because I hadn't even really thought about this man. So to see his face was such a shock. And then also to be looking at these words like band director, underage, and it just seemed so jumbled up. And I knew something was not right. And I had a full-on traumatic episode. I was convulsing and crying, just trying to make sense. And I knew that day, whatever, whoever I was, whatever life I was living, that was over. And I just felt like I'm never going to be happy again, which is such a weird feeling for a person who is so full of life and joy, and to feel like I'm never going to be happy again and to not be able to understand it. And so this man that I had not thought about in so long, all of a sudden it felt like someone, the most important person in the world to me, had died. That's what it felt like. This is when I knew what grief was for the first time, true grief. So he had worked in Michigan for about 20 years. Then he moved to Florida and he was working in Winter Park, Florida for 6 before he was arrested for child sexual abuse and pornography. So the Michigan State Police were like, okay, what did he do here in Michigan? Because there's no way that he didn't do anything and then he moved to Florida. And he had worked in 5 different districts here, and they are very prominent districts in Michigan. So at that point, I thought, okay, I have information the police want. That's all I knew in my head was they were asking for help because this Florida investigation was going on and they wanted help. Who knows what, right? And I knew I had a lot of information. Even when I called the police to tell them what I knew, I thought I was just calling to give them information that would be helpful to them. I did not understand that I was reporting a crime about myself. And so it didn't hit me.
That you were a victim.
No, even then when I was calling, I just thought, I've got information. And it wasn't until the officer said to me, ma'am, it's the county where the crime occurred where you have to report. And I thought he was talking about Florida. It took me a moment to register, oh, he's talking about me. I'm the crime that you're describing. And so that's when I knew I had to report in the Genesee County district where I went to school. So it really turned my whole life upside down. But even though I had all of that information logically, I knew that those things were factual. I did not see myself as being the same situation as what happened in Florida. I did not see myself as being a victim of rape, even though it said that. All I could think was, but you don't understand. You don't know the truth. This man loved me. And I'm not doing that on purpose. What I know about trauma now and what we know collectively is just like our body does what it can to protect ourselves. When you're in a situation, your brain goes into you're doing what you can do to protect yourself. And trauma responses, there's fight or flight or freeze, but there's also fawning. You want to please everybody so that they don't hurt you. Like there's all these trauma responses. And so that was my trauma response. Now that I understand that what I was experiencing back then was PTSD, I did not identify that as what it was because I thought PTSD was a fear response. I thought it's like people that go to war and they hear like a boom and then they like react like they're, in the trenches. For me, my PTSD showed up as me reverting back to my 16-year-old self as having the most intense feelings for this man. So in my body and my brain's way of trying to protect itself, it could not believe that he had lied to me, that all of this was like a sham, like he had manipulated me, he had abused me. I could not accept that at all. So what happened was all of a sudden, all of these memories that I thought were gone were just like resurrected. All of a sudden, I could remember vivid details. I described toward the beginning of the book, looking at his mugshot, and I'm not just looking at it, I can feel that I'm touching his hair. And I had never experienced anything like that. So not only am I dealing with like just the very surface level, I'm involved with the police now. I'm learning I'm a victim of rape after almost 20 years, like of not knowing that I've been walking around as one. I'm also having to figure out the shame and the confusion of having feelings for a man that number one, I know is a criminal and I'm married now. So the shame of that, like I didn't ask for this. Like I didn't ask to feel feelings of loyalty and love to a man that is not my husband. And so it was very, very confusing.
To say the least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I would like to touch on, you mentioned it's like how often this occurs in school. And I think, like we talked about, people really do need to read the book to get more detail on the story. I do want to touch on what you think, if anything, parents can do or look out for, because this is unfortunately more common than we know.
Well, this all starts with a willingness to talk about it. I think that we want so badly to believe this won't happen to us. Parents want to believe that about their children. And I would start by saying it doesn't matter how smart your kid is. This is not about that at all. At all. This isn't about self-esteem. This isn't about intelligence. This is about that grooming looks like care. Grooming, it looks like someone investing in a child. It looks like someone who, wants them to succeed and is showing care and concern for them. I don't want people to go out in the world and not trust people. I always say, I trust you until I have a reason not to. But the difference between me today and me prior to 2019 is that I know what to look for so that if you're not trustworthy, I recognize it earlier. The thing that parents should know is this is observable, as people shouldn't be afraid of it, because if you know what to look for, it's actually not that complicated. Like there's just certain things that happen, right? And there are certain signs. And I would highly recommend to your audience, if they just want a very practical way of knowing how to protect their children, they should buy the book Duck, Duck, Groom: How a Child Becomes a Target by Anna Sonoda. She is a social clinical worker who went in and actually interviewed child sexual predators. She spoke with them and she got to learn like what are the things they have in common. And the one thing they have in common that's all the same is that they pick the easiest target, but then also it is observable and it is intentional. And so grooming is like, it starts out looking like care, but then it becomes boundary pushing. And that's where parents, again, this is not anything to be afraid of. Avoiding it is the thing you should be afraid of doing. But if you talk to your children about, this is what we expect adults should treat you like. If somebody is doing something like, ABC, we want you to tell us that's happening. And so it's just it's observable, it's practical, it's not shrouded in mystery. The only reason it feels that way is because we're not talking about it enough. And so this is a moment in time where we actually have a really significant opportunity because it's so much out in front in the news right now, that we have an opportunity to really face this and actually talk about it. Because if you recognize the signs early enough, it never gets to abuse. You get to interrupt the grooming process.
Can you tell us what observable means?
Sure. So observable just means that it's something that you can see and identify. What makes it complicated is it's hard to explain to somebody else. This is why sexual crimes like this, they so often go under the radar, is because let's say you've never made me feel this way, Gayle, but let's say that you did something that made me feel a little bit weird, but I don't really know how to put into words why it made me feel that way, because I don't have the language, but I know something just didn't sit right with me with the way that you said something or the way that you did something. So for instance, if you said, well, I can tell you this, I wouldn't normally tell any other student this, but I know I can trust you with this information. That kind of thing, because it's creating that isolated world that only you and that student share. Something that I've seen time and time again is a teacher will divulge personal information about their life, or they'll say, my spouse or my partner is just not good to me. And they'll play the victim, because what that does is, they're in a position of power and the student's here. But when they are vulnerable, what appears to be vulnerability is really manipulation. And so by saying, oh, I'm having trouble in my marriage, it makes the student feel like now they're caring for the educator. Now they get to step in and be the caretaker of them. And it gives the illusion that there's a power shift going on, when really that's all it is an illusion.
Right.
And so they've feel like they're now responsible for that person. Does that make sense?
100%. That is similar, and there are parallels to that in the workplace. You see that with adults, even if the intention isn't abuse, but to create a special relationship between two people that don't have the same power level. But maybe that is abuse.
And that's I was going to let you finish your statement because I wanted you to get your thought out. I want to tell you that it is grooming. So I think when people hear the word grooming, they immediately think adult, child, sex. They connect all those things. But there is absolutely 100% grooming that happens in the workplace and between people. And there's that power imbalance, right? Grooming is it's training you and preparing you to serve a certain role in somebody else's life. It is a way of gaining control over somebody. And so what you've just described is grooming. If a boss or something is sharing personal things and making you feel like, oh, we have this special relationship, but that complicates the professional relationship because this is a person that has power over you. And it is abuse because, somebody told me this years ago and I will never forget it, abuse is a misuse of something. The person that is you're supervising, if you're using them as a person you can tell all your secrets to and you're putting them in positions they should not be in, you are misusing them. That is not what they are there for. And that is an abuse of power. So it doesn't even have to involve sex. Like you said, it could just be loyalty. It's just blind loyalty, right? Where you just go, okay, this is the person, and you feel trapped. I just wanted to say you're right on. It is grooming. It is abusive. And we need to call it out for what it is.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because look at me. I'm explaining a situation and realizing, wait, no, actually that is abuse.
You're it is.
Yeah, no, that's really important. One of the things that I think about in situations like this is the world doesn't stop. You have to carry on. So how on earth did you navigate the emotional trauma from all this?
I want to be very transparent and say that it has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life is to be able to overcome this and come out on the other side with a life that to be where I am today. Let's just put it that way, to be where I am today. But the reason I am where I am today is because I was willing to face it head on. I was willing to face what happened. I think that when most people pick up the book or start listening, they think, oh, this is an abuse story. I know what's going to happen. And then they get to a certain point and they go, oh, holy shit. Like it's
Yeah, I know what happens, and I will agree. Yes, nobody knows
yeah,
what's going to happen.
it's very shocking. And in a lot of cases, people have said they were so angry. I fully can empathize and sympathize with that. Is that, yeah, it is. It's angering. You know, people have said, I was so angry at you. And I'm like, yeah, I was angry at myself. This is why this is so horrible. But you would see, you know, somebody was going through something. You'd be like, oh, you know, thank goodness that'll never happen to me. And then something happens and you go, oh, like this is really, really bad. Now what do I do? Because who I thought I was or what I thought I was capable of doing or not doing, that was not true. And it shatters your whole image and reality of who you are. But then you have to say to yourself, you have to dig deeper and say, I didn't do this because I'm a bad person. If you really want to heal from it, you don't need to be afraid of yourself. There's nothing that you've done in your life that makes you unworthy of love, and that we are all going to reach this moment where you're going to either try to run from the worst thing you've ever done or had happened to you or whatever, or you're going to turn to it and say, I want to really understand it so that this doesn't happen again. And so I really came at it sort of like I'm an educator. I came at it wanting to learn because I knew that if I didn't, I was in very real danger of my entire life falling apart. I mean, already it had fallen apart in so many ways. But back to how did I get here today, having written a book, and now I'm sitting here with you talking about it, and I feel no shame in talking about it. I did feel shame, and I had to work through that. But shame is a human thing to feel. And for us to be able to gauge when we've done something wrong so we can correct that behavior. But to feel unconditional love for yourself and compassion and just facing yourself with honesty, there is a freedom on the other side of that that I would never want to give up. You know, I learned through therapy, my therapist said, you can hold two things that are even contradicting, two beliefs. And so over here in this hand, I think to myself, I really wish that, you know, these things would have never happened to me. That's true. But over here, I would never want to give up who I am today because these things over here happened. For your listeners out there, if they have ever done something or had something happen to them and they feel like I wouldn't, you know, if somebody found out about that, they would hate me. I would lose belonging in this world. I want to tell you that is a lie. That is shame lying to you. And that there is a gift in facing that with total compassion and empathy and honesty. And then you may lose some relationships or have relationships change because you were willing to be honest with yourself. But I would rather choose myself over anybody else, because if I am only loved or accepted because I fit into a box and I'm not allowed to step outside of that box, that is not a relationship I'm interested in anyway. So I can look at these other relationships that have come and gone, or these people that have decided, you know, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, or whatever this isn't, I'm not interested in this, Megan. Then I can say, thank you for the time we had together, and I wish you the best in your life, but this is what I need to do now. And I have met people like you and other survivors, and I would choose that any day, because those are the gifts I'm being rewarded with, because I'm living an authentic life, because I'm living the life I'm meant to live.
Megan, thank you for saying that. I mean, I relate personally, and I have not been through specifically what you've been through, but I can relate intensely to shame and things that we judge ourselves so harshly about. And I know there are so many in the audience who can relate, big or small. We feel shame and we're so hard on ourselves. And in the process of meeting you and people like you through my podcast, to be honest, I have just been opened up to so many incredible people who are honest about the good and the bad and the ugly. And that is what makes us beautiful. And loving yourself is truly, I think it's the hardest thing for a lot of us to do, but it is worth the work. Let's talk about Give Her the Pen. Again, it's hard in this short time to really make sure the audience understands how much you went through and how far you've come. It has felt like a lifetime. And so why did you feel like this is something that you should add to your plate, quite frankly, when I feel like, Megan, you should just be taking care of yourself and doing care and, doing your thing. And you're like, no, I'm going to add a new business to my plate. Like, why is that? Why is that important to you?
I just saw what writing this book did for me. It saved my life. I'm not saying that in like a metaphorical sense or whatever. I mean, it's very literal that I knew I had to take drastic measures to do something to save myself. And I thought, I'm going to do it by writing. Number one is so powerful because while you're writing, you're making connections that you wouldn't have made. I had issues with substance abuse. And when I was writing, it was a way for me to stay away from drinking because I was so invested in something else. It's sort of like when you're pregnant, that was one of the few times I was able to not drink because I had something that was more important to me, that I had a purpose that was more important, and that was creating this life inside of me. And so I shifted my purpose. Like I took this awful thing and this energy that was in my body, and that if I didn't do something with it, it was going to consume me. And I thought, how do I take it and put it out? And how do I turn my pain into purpose, basically? And so when I saw what healing I was able to achieve through the writing process, I thought, I want to be able to give this gift to other women specifically. And that isn't to say that it isn't important for other genders, but I think I get in this trap where I want to save everybody and everything, and you can't. I relate to women, and I have a very soft spot for women. Like I just love adult women, and I feel like I connect with them, and like that's my calling. And so my sister-in-law and I co-founded this business. I had asked her to go into business with me because we just thought, hey, how do we help other women who are going through things to do what I've been able to do? So I said, Give Her the Pen was this business I wanted to start to help women heal through the process of writing. And so our like slogan, if you will, is write your story, own the ending. You get to own what's happened to you through that writing process. It's like you write it and you think, oh, can I write that? It's even if you're alone in your like bedroom and you're writing, we're like afraid to write down the words because it'll make it too real, that what we did or what happened. But if you can do it, you write it down and go, oh, I'm okay. It's like an act of bravery. It is an act of faith and bravery to write because you don't know what's going to happen and you don't know what's going to come out of you, and trusting that every time you pick up a pen, when I say pick up a pen, I mean you can type too, but there is something about going right through your body onto a piece of paper and feeling it that is different. Both are helpful, and I would recommend both. But anyway, so we created this business and it's in its infancy. So right now we work off of like referrals. I'm working on a manuscript right now with a client, and she is writing about mothers who have dealt with pediatric illness and loss because she had lost her teenage son to cancer. And so she is wanting to tell the stories of other women and to help other women deal with this, other mothers deal with it. So it's not something like I can fully, because I do other things. I'm a voice coach and everything. But if I meet somebody or somebody comes to me and says, I want your help, I need your help, I have the tools to be able to help them do that. So I am, an editor and a writer and all those. And I just want to be able to help people in any way I can and to do as much good as I can for as long as possible. So that's my goal.
You're doing so much good. I mean, you're impacting the trajectory of my life, Megan, just in our conversations. What I'm learning is, for anybody listening, is you think, is your story worth telling? It is. If you think, well, I don't think it was as bad for me, or what I went through doesn't compare, is my story going to really resonate or help other people? It will. Like, your story matters. You matter, right? And there's value, however you want to tell that story. If it's one-to-one, right? You don't have to write a book, whatever it is. If anybody gets anything out of this conversation, it is that like you are worthy and you should not feel shame for your choices and that your story matters.
Yes, and I'm so glad you said you don't have to write a book. It's the willingness to face it. That's really what's important, and to make sense of it. And so, like you said, if it's just gives you the ability to share it with a person you trust, it does not have to look the way mine looks, or even on your social media account or whatever, to be vulnerable because it's for you. Like, don't do it for other people. You end up doing it for you, to say, I wrote those words. And even if nobody says it to you, let's say you put something on social media and nobody says anything, that there are people that will read them and think, I wish I had the bravery to do that. And so you can be proud of yourself for being able to do something that so many people wish that they could do, and that don't even have the language to express that.
Mm-hmm. I'm learning that one social media post at a time, Megan. So I am never afraid to be honest, but being really vulnerable and pushing that envelope and sharing, I'm sharing about what I'm going through, which is separation, divorce, and the challenges and the fear that come along with that. And to your point, you don't need thousands of likes and comments. I get messages from women, just one-off, that if I help one woman not feel shame, it was worth it. I totally agree with that. We don't have to be influencers, right? To make an impact.
That sounds like too much work, frankly. That sounds like way too much responsibility.
Exactly. No, thank you. I know we're running out of time. I would like to touch on one more topic, if we can, is how, because this, of course, resonates with me, when we're going through change and we are dealing with ourselves and we are evolving. I can say for myself, I was always concerned, like, well, what is that going to mean for my husband, my mom and dad, my sister and brother, or whoever, right? You obviously went through a huge transformation, and that has to impact your most personal relationships, your husband and your children. How to navigate that, or if somebody's listening and they're like, you know what, it's safer to just stay who I am, because I don't think the people around me could handle it if I really became my true self. What would you say to that person? And I might be that person also.
And so what I would say is that if someone didn't love you for that if someone didn't want to be in your sphere because of your willingness to be honest about your failures, and it's okay to say we failed. We're human beings, right? Your failures in life. That if somebody looks at you, Gayle, and says, I don't want to be a part of that you can say, go in peace then. Because I think that we've been taught these messages that I was told this by my father when I was young, that nothing is more important than blood. No, that's not true. Only some people are capable of going on the journey with you. That, also you have to leave space that some people, they're not in the spot that you are, right? And you have to be able to give them their space to be who they are too, and to try to do it without bitterness. And yeah, you can feel the anger and things like that, but I love who you are. If you are being who you are and you are putting love out into the world and honesty and goodness out into the world, that will attract the people it is supposed to attract. The people that are meant to stay with you on this journey will stay with you. The people that aren't will leave, and that's okay. You're the only one that has to live your life and has to hold yourself accountable. And at the end of your life, when you're lying there, say to yourself, I'm really proud of who I was. And so I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you, Megan. But it wasn't supposed to be about me. It's for everybody else.
But it is for everybody. It is. That's what I mean. I just went with what was in my heart. Those were the first words that came to my mind when you asked those questions or you brought that subject up, is that goodness attracts goodness. And for other people, there doesn't mean they're bad if they can't have a relationship with you because your authenticity is too much for them, or that's where you just have to say, let it be. And go do your thing, but this is who I need to be for myself, and you will reap the reward of that in the way that you're supposed to.
One of the greatest things that has happened to me since I started to become my actual self and stop putting myself last, right? And figuring out, who am I actually? Not the wife, the mother, the daughter, whoever, right? But who am I and who do I actually want to be? And starting to make those changes, and it opened up my entire world. And I don't know what that's going to end up looking like, right? At the end of our life, but it's going to be better than it would have been had I not made that shift. So I would encourage people to do it.
Mm-hmm. And give it time. How people respond to you today, the relationship,
True.
That can change. Give it years. That was one of the shifts for me was I always thought I got to fix it today, tomorrow, next week. Like I was thinking in days and weeks and months. And eventually now I think in years. I think, okay, well this year that relationship is like this, but who knows what next year that relationship will look like? Because you just got to give things time to heal. And you have to just have faith that things are going to turn out the way that they're supposed to if you're aligning your actions with your values.
No, I'm glad you said that. Because is this because we're high performing women that we're like, we have to fix this yesterday?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, this is taking too long, right? But yes, it takes time. So for anyone who's looking, obviously they need to read your book and we can put the link in the show notes. But where can our listeners find you?
If you just go to meganfarison.com, there's a form you can fill out if you're wanting to contact me for whatever reason, just to say hello. I do have, depending on the day, I have a Facebook account. Sometimes I deactivate it because I just can't handle it, and I'm like, I need a break and I need to separate myself. But meganfarison.com is a way that you'll be able to just go. You can learn more about me and and that's how you can contact me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Megan. I don't know how to thank you enough. Truly, we are all a work in progress. We are all figuring it out together. Thank you so much for giving your time and being so brave, really, truly brave to tell your story and help other people.
Thank you, Gayle.
Thank you. I hope that was helpful. If you know someone that you go to for this topic, send them my way. After all, we're just figuring this out together. See you next time.